local broadcast of Detroit Black Journal is made possible in part by a grant from the men and women of Michigan.
Hello, Detroit Black Journal, you're on the air.
Hello, I'm a University of Detroit student.
Hi, this is Susan. I heard what you just said, and I disagree.
Well,
My name is Bill Harris. I have a question to ask.
Right.
And I'd like to respond to
Thanks
that.
again.
I think that's mythological and short.
Live from the studios of WTVS, Detroit Black Journal proudly continues 16 award-winning years of history, news, and current affairs from a black perspective.
Good evening, I'm Ed Gordon. This year marks the 40th anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier and becoming the first black to play professional baseball. It seems ironic that the celebration of this event that changed not only the world of sports but society itself is marred with accusations of racism still being prevalent in athletics 4 decades later. Statements made by a Los Angeles Dodger vice president that blacks may not have the necessities to be field or general managers shocked the nation. Many have questioned why the National Football League has no black head coaches. And last week's flap over comments made by Pistons Isaiah Thomas and Dennis Rodman about Boston Celtic Larry Bird receiving more media attention because he's white, and the stereotyping of black players by the press drew national coverage. These are just a few incidents that have led many to cry foul. Joining us tonight to talk about racism in sports are ex-All-Pro Detroit Lion running back Mel Farr, former Detroit Tiger Gates Brown, who left the club over a contract dispute. Many have said race played a role in the negotiation. And Earl Lloyd, who coached the Pistons in the 1972-73 season. He also has the distinction of being the first black to play in the National Basketball Association. We'll also be joined by phone with Detroit Free Press writer Joe Lapointe, who recently looked at the question of race in sports. You too can get involved in the conversation. 872-4040 is the number. Gentlemen, I thank all three of you for being here this evening. We were talking about bad timing, good timing, and what Isaiah Thomas went through. We really had planned this show some time ago before the flap occurred, and as Mr. Lloyd and I were discussing, we were held up in Farmer Jack, basically talking about this some time ago. But let's get right on that point, the Isaiah Thomas incident. And before we do that, why don't we take a look at a bit of tape that Isaiah, or that we received from WDIV, first of all, I should say, and we thank them for that. This is the news conference he held last Wednesday to try to explain what exactly he meant. And this talks about the stereotyping of black athletes. So if we can get that ready, we'll roll that tape right now.
There are stereotypes for black athletes. I don't think it's consciously. I think it's very subconsciously. I don't think anybody in here says or deliberately tries to say that. But when you say that we have God-given talent, we do things instinctively, you're not referring to how hard we work and how intelligent that we can be in terms of basketball.
What about that, Mr. Lloyd? Is that fair, what he's saying?
I agree with him wholeheartedly. If there's one thing I may disagree, I think it's done consciously sometimes. I really believe that, and it gets to be quite pervasive sometimes. And I like to think that Isaiah, at halftime of the game on the West Coast, and I thought he put the whole thing in proper perspective. When they played the tape, and I think if he needed to be absolved, I think that tape absolved him.
Well, there's no question, and the tape showed that in the comments that he made about Larry Bird, if he were black, would just be another good guy. And he sarcastically said that and did have a laugh afterwards. Beyond that point, because I think everybody who knows Isaiah Thomas and anybody who understands basketball cannot take away the talent of Larry Bird. But the idea that perhaps even as great as he is, perhaps he does get more media attention because he's white. Is that fair?
Well, you mentioned earlier that Joe Lapointe would be joining us by phone, and I'm sure you know that I talked to Joe last week, and he kind of asked the same question. And the thing I said was that Larry Bird is, no question, is not overrated. I mean, the man's a fantastic basketball player. But I shared with Joe the fact that I thought that the man was overhyped. Mm-hmm. I mean, at every turn, they shove Larry Bird down your throat. And to Larry Bird's credit, I think he's very uncomfortable with that position. You might recall a couple of years ago that the writers got into this white knight situation, and he personally, and I heard this, that he personally squashed that whole situation about the white knight. And I think Larry Bird should be credited for the way he handled the Isaiah Thomas thing. And he said it very clearly that if I'm not upset, what's the problem?
I think, and I want to get you two gentlemen involved in just a moment. I think we have Mr. Lapointe on the phone line right now. Are you with us, Joe?
I read you loud and clear.
Okay, very good. You've been listening to what we've said so far. What about the situation as you, as a white man and a white writer, a member of the media, see it? Does Larry Bird get more attention because he's white?
I suppose that he does stand out. Obviously he does. Anyone watching a game on TV or in person would tend to pick him out of a crowd, not only because of race, but also, of course, because of talent. I think Larry finds it to be something of a burden. I remember 5 years ago when this issue would come up, reporters would ask him about it and he would become almost angry. Now he's matured a little bit, or quite a bit, and he's learned to accept it and give a reasonable answer. It was sort of ironic in the Boston Garden after Game 7 with the Pistons. We're all sitting around, and I heard Larry Bird say, "Oh, well, I'm very happy to be white," as if to say, what else do you expect me to be? And that's when I realized, oh my goodness, there's something going on here besides free throws and field goals.
Okay, stay with us. We're going to come back to you throughout the show. Mr. Farr, that kind of situation certainly happens, I would imagine, in football, in the sense that we have heard for so long there are no black quarterbacks. You can count the handful that have been in the NFL throughout the years. Is that a situation that you, as an ex-Lion, can look back upon and say that perhaps blacks were slighted?
Well, I have to go back to my high school days where I was a quarterback. I was all-state quarterback for 2 years in Hebert High School in Beaumont, Texas. And I went to UCLA, and at that time there were very few black quarterbacks in playing college ball. So, and I wanted to be a quarterback, and they felt that my other skills was better than my ability to throw the football. That's what they felt, and so they made me a running back. As though most of the blacks that come out of college today that are quarterbacks, they have a tendency to make them running backs. Why? I don't think that, I think consciously, subconsciously, they feel that we cannot lead. They feel that we can run, we can block, we can tackle, and etc. But I think there's a feeling that we cannot lead. We cannot think as the majority race. And I played football for 7 years with the Lions, and wondered, why that there are not that many black quarterbacks in the National Football League. I think talent and skill, I think we're capable of doing it, but I don't think we really get put in the right situation and given the right opportunity and the chance. So
do you think, though, that it's a conscious effort to keep blacks out of that position?
We can do everything else on the football field, so why can't we be an outstanding quarterback? If you look in the Canadian Football League, there are quite a few black quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League. I think it's because of the mentality of the Canadian coaches and the fans there. I think that here in the National Football League, I think it's probably conscious.
Mr. Brown, let's talk to you a little bit about racism in baseball. When this Isaiah Thomas incident blows over, the Al Campana situation is still going to be there because the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People has decided that, as Jesse Jackson called it, July 4th is going to be a day of reckoning for baseball, if you will. They're going to look at marching on some of the stadiums in an attempt to get more blacks in managerial positions and front office positions. The Tigers have just hired a young man that I went to school with to be in their front office. But what is the situation as far as you can tell as baseball is concerned, and especially the Tigers organization, which for a long time, it's no secret, at least in the black community, has been looked upon as one who did not necessarily want blacks in the organization for a very long time?
Well, I believe that, it's true the Tigers was one of the last teams to have black ball players as late as 59. Dobie, he was through when they got him, but let's say starting with 60 with Billy Bruton and Jake Woods. We've had a lot of exciting, not only exciting, but good black ball players come through Detroit. I think one of the main reasons that they don't think that we're capable of doing some of the jobs that we are doing is because possibly we excel on the ball field. Now, I know one thing, that if you can think in the heat of a ball game, you know, you get up and the guy's on first base and you see a guy try to go to right field automatically without the manager having to tell him, and that's telling you right there that he's in the game, he's thinking about the game, he's trying to move the runner along. We can do a lot of things if only given the opportunity, you know, and it's been, like you said, 40 years since Jackie Robinson broke in, and we've had 1, 2 black managers, Frank Robinson, Derry Doby for a minute, Murray Wills, but their stint have been so short. You know, you can't say 1 or 2 years, and then if you don't do it right away, you know, your chances seem like, to me, they say, well, we gave him a chance, that's it. Because there's a lot of guys that get more opportunities than that, and they're still in the game.
Now, some people, not necessarily yourself, but some people, and just to briefly tell the people who might not know, you were Tiger batting coach from 78 to 84, and then you quit the team in a contract dispute. Now, did you feel, and there were some people who felt that perhaps because of race, the Tigers say that they offered you the standard increase that they offered everyone else. Do you think, had you been a white batting coach, that they perhaps would have said, hey, Gator, well, here's a little bit more?
Well, I look at it like this. I had a responsible job. If you look at our statistics, we were the top team, one of the top teams in both leagues. Now, don't tell me because this coach, we're offering all coaches the same amount of money. I don't go along with that, because I'm busting my buns trying to get a reputation, trying to help and do things the best way I can. And I think if my job shows that I am doing the job, then don't tell me I deserve as much as the rest of them or they deserve as much as me. But I can say one thing, you had a pitching coach. I mean, they offer him a $40,000 raise and me a $3,000 raise.
Roger Craig, you're talking
now you
about.
can take that for what it's worth right there.
Okay. We want to get to the phone lines. We'll be addressing some other questions in a moment. Hi, you're on DBJ. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, my name is Rick Taylor. I'm a copy editor, sports copy editor on the Detroit Free Press Sports Desk. I've been there for 14 months. I just briefly wanted to say that regarding the Isaiah Thomas issue, it unfortunately really isn't a dead issue, because there have been at least 2 or 3 stories that I've seen on the wire that have said that Isaiah was still wrong for speaking out, and that he perhaps is trying to take some of the Larry Bird situation off by bringing out the issue of stereotypes. And while it's not being played as much here in Detroit, and Joe did a good job in trying to state the issue with the article that ran on Sunday, it's still getting a whole lot of unfortunate play throughout the country.
Do you think that that is an attempt by white writers especially to knock what before this incident was certainly one of the most well-liked and well-respected black players in any sport?
I think so, because it seems kind of strange to me that when Brent Musburger was questioning Isaiah on Thursday night, that he was asked, that Musburger was asking Thomas about why, the way he was laughing, etc. And yet now it seems a couple of days after, you see all the articles that are trying to rebut that Thomas was kidding around. Why is it that his accusers couldn't make their views known on that same show? It seems like if they're not trying to let it die, that at least that Thomas really did offend, I guess what you would call a white bastion, which would be the folks who write for the newspapers.
Okay, what about that, Mr. Lloyd? Are they really trying to make Isaiah pay for it?
Yeah, I think so. It's the way I see it, Ed, is the young white writers who cover basketball have advertently or inadvertently, consciously, unconsciously created an institution with Larry Bird, and in this country you don't dare. I mean, a young black, even of the magnitude of Isaiah, you don't dare attack a white institution. And it's ironic Because, like I said to Joe Lapointe, and Joe would probably address this, you take a writer 26 years old who writes that Larry Bird is the best player ever in the NBA. Now, I mean, a kid 26 years old, who has he seen play? And first of all, we all know that you deal with apples and oranges. You got guards, you got centers, you got forwards. You know, I mean, how can you say Isaiah Thomas is a better basketball player than Wilt Chamberlain? It's apples and oranges. You know, it's an unfortunate situation, and I sincerely hope that they take a hard look at what Isaiah's saying, because there's more to this issue than Larry Bird and Isaiah Thomas. It really is. And when he says that the announcers stereotype black players, it's true. You know, the finals, Indiana and Syracuse, all you heard was how smart Steve Alford was. You know, he brushes guys off of picks, he finds a seam, he gets to the three-point shot. He's a bright kid. And if you notice, like, you listen to these announcers, and maybe it's unconscious, I don't know, but it's there. They will say, when a white kid makes a mistake, they say, well, that wasn't smart. When the black kids make a mistake, they say, that was dumb. It's obvious.
Okay. Let me get the phone calls in. We've got a couple of more questions for you all, of course. Hi, you're on DBJ. Go ahead.
Yes, my question was directed toward your entire panel. I was wondering what, in their opinion, is the reason for the media's overemphasis of Isaiah's statements and the lack of emphasis on the black coaching deficiency in the NBA.
What was the second part of the question?
And the lack of emphasis on the black coaching deficiency in the NBA.
Okay. You know, let's take that a step further and talk about, and we'll get back to the first part of the question, but what about the situation of emphasis in terms of black coaches, not only in the NBA, but the NFL, where there are none?
You know, I left the Detroit Lions in the NFL in 1974. 1975, I became an automobile dealer. At the time I became a Ford dealer, there was only 16 Ford black dealerships in the country. There are no black vice presidents of Ford Motor Company. There are very few blacks in the top management of our largest corporations in America. There are no black coaches. There's no black general managers in professional football. What it is saying to us, and I find it very difficult to deal with it as a player. We can play, we can run, but we cannot coach. We cannot be general managers. The reason for that is that they don't think that we are smart enough or intelligent enough, all right, for them to put their multi-million-dollar club in our hands and for us to go out and perform, as the corporations don't feel that we're capable of doing it. And I say, you don't know if we're capable unless you give us an opportunity to prove, you know, that we're capable of doing. Now, K.C. Jones, I think, has done an outstanding job of coaching the Boston Celtics, but nobody really mentioned how good of a job of K.C. Jones have done with the Boston Celtics. You take Bill Russell, he was the only coach to coach two back-to-back NBA champions. No one talks about that. We're capable if given the opportunity, but first of all we want is that opportunity. I was in Chicago a week ago last Friday with Reverend Jackson and Hank Aaron and Oscar Robertson and et cetera, where we had a fairness in sports conference there talking about this July 4th, you would say, awareness,
or protest, which is what they're looking
at. Whatever you want to call it, is that when we talked about it, we had roundtables with some officials from the NBA and the National Football League and et cetera, talking about, you know, what are we going to do, how are we going to combat this problem that we have, and it is a problem that we have, because to me, I can't understand why they can continue to say, hey, we're going to question your intelligence. You know, we're not going to question your athletic ability, but we're going to question your intelligence by letting us have the forefront and being out there as coaches and general managers.
Now, as you suggested, Mr. Brown, there have been some black coaches, head coaches, in Major League Baseball, but they don't get the same return as the other coaches who have been in the league, where you see if one's fired, you know he's going to be picked up immediately, and then down the line become a head coach again.
Well, that's true. You know, it seemed like there's a brotherhood or something. You know, this manager gets fired here, he'll be around. You know, it'll take Billy Martin case, how many teams have he's managed? And there's a lot of guys like him that's been around the horn, so to speak. But we don't seem to get that opportunity. I mean, you know, it takes a while to build a ball club, whether it's baseball, basketball, or football, or to get the kind of personnel that you want, you know. You take, when Sparky first came here, they gave him a 5-year contract. Well, he had 5 years to build a club, and he did win at the end of 5 years. But I mean, how many guys would get that opportunity, especially black now? If you don't do it right away, you got a big problem.
Okay. We're going to go back to the phone lines and take a number of them in a row. So please keep your question brief, and you gentlemen, if you can, try to answer it very quickly. Hi, you're on DBJ. Go ahead.
Hi, this is directed to Gates Brown. Recently, Reggie Jackson had an article in Sports Illustrated about racism in baseball, and his comments basically reflected the attitude that, well, once they get more used to us being around the field and in different positions, you know, maybe they won't mind us being around so much. And I was wondering what your feeling was about that article.
Well, I thought Reggie hit it right on the head. It was a nice article. He was letting people know the awareness of some of the things in sports. But, you know, it's like when I was coaching. Well, I never wanted to be a coach all my life because there was a step higher than coaching, which was managing. And this is what I was trying. I always kept saying, well, maybe someone will see the job that I'm doing and will take a chance in a Gates Brown. But sometimes it get hard when you keep trying to buck the system.
And he also mentioned in that article, where is Gates Brown? And a question that might well be asked, that you have not been picked up.
Well, I mean, I've had some opportunities, but at this time...
But obviously something that wasn't good enough for you to take. Okay. Hi, you're on DBJ. Go ahead. Hello?
Yes.
Yes, you're on. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to know, why haven't more black players stood up and say, we won't take this anymore? Either you hire more blacks or we just won't play.
Good question. Mr. Lloyd, why don't you take that? The NBA is 80% black. Is it the livelihood that they're concerned about?
Oh, no question. Well, you know, we talked about this in the room. I was asked once, you know, why do blacks dominate basketball? And I explained as succinctly as I can that blacks don't dominate basketball. The folks who dominate are the folks who are high on fire. And unless you're $1 million basketball player, where you can influence the situation, that, you know, you have to understand there are a lot of guys playing pro basketball who don't make close to $1 million. And if you stand up and start screaming and hollering, you're going to lose your livelihood.
What about those of them that do? Magic, Michael Jordan, Kareem. Can these people get together and say, listen, can they put, I mean, Magic put some pressure on when he didn't want that coach there, and they got Pat Riley in. Can they do the same and say, you guys are going to have to hire some more blacks? Though the NBA does have more than
if it's going to be done, if it's going to be done, it's going to have to be done collectively by all the stars in this league. I'll give you an example of how things get done quickly. Before, now, you know, there's no pension plan for the folks in basketball who finished before 65. How the pension plan got started in the NBA, the owners wouldn't even talk. So one year in Boston, a half hour before the All-Star game was to start, they said, the hell with it, we're not going to play unless you give us a commitment right now. And that's the kind of things folks respond to.
Okay. Hi, you're on DBJ. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Brown whether he feels the El Campanis incident accounts for the fact that no managers have been fired this year, and usually by this time there will have been a manager fired.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it could have a bearing on the case. I mean, you got some managers walking around now on shaky ground. You got a couple of teams, I mean, the season been going on for 3 months almost, haven't won 20 ball games. And maybe that might be one of the reasons they haven't fired anyone.
Do you think the next manager hired is going to be black?
Well, that's hard to say. I would like to see it, but not because of that. But it's like Earl said, they're going to have to want to. You're not going to bully them or pressure them into it. It's going to have to be a collective thing, and someone that they believe in that can do the job.
Okay. Hi, you're on DBJ. Go ahead. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, you're on.
Hi. Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Farr if Mr. Thomas, the general manager of the Detroit Lions, if he were black, would he have been around as long as he was, as he is?
Well, I really could not answer that question because we've never had one that was black in the position. So you can imagine if we've never had one that was black in the position, that if he was black, I think that question answers itself.
Let me ask you quickly, because we're running out of time. The black head coach situation in the NFL, is that going to happen in the foreseeable future? They think Tony Dungy may who's with the Steelers now, may get the next call. Is that going to happen soon?
I hope so. How soon, it depends on the kind of pressure, and I say pressure, political pressure. I think the kind of pressure that the ball players put on management to make sure that that there is a black.
So it may well happen.
Oh yeah, I think it's going to happen, but we want it to happen soon, not 10 years from now.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks very much. That's our time. I appreciate you being here this evening. This issue won't die down early, we know that. Before we go, a reminder that June is Black Music Month. In celebration of that, throughout this month, we'll be giving away LPs. Tonight, courtesy of Warner Brothers Records, we've got the latest Atlantic Star album. For the first 50 viewers who send us a card, send it to DBJ Celebration, 7441 2nd Boulevard, Detroit, Michigan, 48202. Please put the words Atlantic Star on the card. Next week, we'll look at the bicentennial celebration of our nation's Constitution and what that means to blacks. We close tonight with a salute to the consummate athlete and gentleman. This is Jeffrey Osborne and Julius Irving. Everything good takes time. I'll talk to you next Monday. Happy birthday, Mama. Good night.
My dreams have never died. But down love brought me from them.
Detroit Black Journal is a live television production of WTVS Channel 56. The opinions expressed on Detroit Black Journal are those of the participants and not necessarily those of the staff and management of Channel 56.
Like an aging wine, everything good takes time.
Local broadcast of Detroit Black Journal is made possible in part by a grant from the men and women of Mishkan.